Well, first, I want to thank the Lawyers Guild so much for this honor. It's a great thrill for me. Um, I was very lucky to have politically involved leftist parents. So I grew up in an environment where, from a very young age, a commitment to social justice, which I got to understand better as I grew older. But that was normal. That was part of life. I was very active in the New Left and the student movement in the 1960s. And I started off thinking about teaching political science. I published a book on Marxism. But as the 60s wore on, the war in Vietnam was getting worse and worse. There was pushback against the civil rights movement. And I had this great desire to do something more practical than academic life, which is ironic because I wound up in academic life for reasons I'll explain. So I thought I would go to law school, and I had I think, a limited view of what it really was, that it was a set of tools like a screwdriver and a hammer. And of course, it's much, much more complicated than that. To practice law for social justice in an imaginative way, you need to have vision. You need to have skills to question the legal authorities and to learn not to take them for granted and to dig out what's lying underneath them. So anyway, I went to law school and I had some wonderful teachers, but most of my teachers, even the left of center ones, it was deadening because they taught law as a technique. They were preparing me to be a functionary in a system that I could only change at the margins. What was missing from my legal education was the idea that legal doctrines, legal discourses, it's that's a medium in which you contest for a vision of a better society. It's not fixed. It's not rigid. There are cracks that can be opened and filled with a social justice imaginary, and that's part of what being a lawyer is. And I was missing that in my legal education. I vaguely had a crazy idea that somebody should make a contribution to social justice by reimagining legal education, by not politicizing students. The students that have come to me at Northeastern, they come with their social justice commitments. I don't have to persuade them about that, but to give them the emotional and the intellectual and the practical tools so they can be visionaries in the practice of law, not just quote technicians. Um, well, I had that thought, but I graduated. My father had been a union organizer. I had a beloved labor law professor who inspired me. So I wanted to be a labor lawyer. I was very committed to workers' movements. And I went for a couple of years to the National Labor Relations Board, and then I was in the great Boston labor firm of Siegel, Reutman, and Coleman. And it was wonderful. I loved practice. And then an odd thing happened. I was invited to teach a summer class on labor law at Northeastern, and I just fell in love with it. I couldn't tear myself away from the classroom. And suddenly, this idea of making a contribution to social justice by reimagining legal education, it became real for me in a way that in the years prior was just in my imagination. I think when I graduated law school, I had a very individualistic idea of what lawyers do, that they're, special in some way, and they're out there on their own. Uh, what it took years to learn, but I was very lucky to learn, is that all serious, creative social justice lawyering is a collective effort. You cannot do it on your own, no matter how gifted you are. You need to work with colleagues and comrades. not just in your community, but now all over the world. So with the internet age, we can now connect with colleagues, comrades, facing the same issues in a different culture, a different climate, and without that solidarity, my intellectual work and my teaching would have been impoverished. So I guess my word of advice to graduating lawyers, beginning lawyers, is learn how to make serious and lasting working relationships with colleagues.